I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, June the 25th, brought to you in part by ProBac Vaccines by VITALIX. ProBac vaccines provide the most complete protection against common BRD causing bacteria. Other killed vaccines don't even come close. For more information, go to BuyMedaBiologicals.com. Beef sales are brisk, and if you're watching how much that the Packers have slashed slaughter here over this big run up in fat cattle prices, you might think, well, people aren't really eating beef very much. But I was reading The Beef Read by Cassie Fish on Tuesday, and she kind of looked into it, and I thought it was interesting. But last week it really tripped as far as wholesalers buying beef, and we are not at an all-time record high as far as the whole carcass, comprehensive cutout carcass. It's still the all-time record high from back during COVID when the gouging was going on, and we're not even getting close to that. Now the loin, that particular cut, the loin is at an all-time record high, and I mentioned that last week. But if you look through there at the comprehensive report that shows all the sales volume from all the different cuts, and I'm talking about not just the spot, but contracts and formula, and that's the way that packers sell most of the beef. It's on a formula deal, just the way that they buy cattle is mostly on the formula. That's the way they sell their beef, and that's one way to kind of keep those prices hidden, also through mandatory price reporting. If you're on some type of a formula deal, by the time you put all those in, the price ranges on the different cuts are so wide you can't really make heads or tails out of them. But last week, your total volume on all categories and all ways to sell them was 7,354 loads. Now typically I'm giving you the spot trade, and for the week it's only 400 to 700 loads, but that's just a hand-to-mouth, short notice type sales that I'm telling you about. But that comprehensive cutout last week spiked to over 370, and that's a big price. That's for choice cuts there, and that pales in comparison to the all-time high that it hit during COVID, which was 420. But still, I thought that was interesting to see how much those sales have improved. That is much more than they've been selling. And now we're going to see packers start to ramp up slaughter. It was almost as if they weren't really interested in having much beef product around the way that they were slashing slaughter. It's just that they were under red ink, and now that they're getting those prices up and they're starting to move a lot of product, they're going to be wanting to increase slaughter a little bit, and we're going to see if the cattle are there. It sounds to me like most everybody is pretty current, and some of you have said, well, the carcasses are big, they can't be current. That's the way the packers want those carcasses, is to be big, to help them get through this period of tight supplies. So just because we have big carcasses doesn't mean that those guys aren't current. In fact, they can just keep the cattle and they'll take them that much bigger weeks later. But we're starting to see your packers come around a little bit, just as they are getting tougher on your cattle sellers about paying for fat cattle. But this week, the early trade, and there hasn't been very much, but the early direct sales of fat cattle has been really disappointing, and it seems like it's trying to dip down to what your futures are for the June contract. But your auctions are still brisk. The sales, competitive sales like they have at Stockman's Livestock in Yankton, those cattle, that's kind of like the hand-to-mouth box beef cutout sales. That's the guys that need some cattle right away, and some of your smaller packers and things, they're paying up for them just as high as they've ever paid for them this week. But let's look at your board on Tuesday. June live cattle down 70 cents at $221.60, and you think it'd be trying to come up to meet to meet the trade a little bit, but it's just continuing to go down, and there's no reason for it not to, I guess. August live cattle up 17 cents at 209.55, and then your back months down 15 to down 47. Feeder cattle were down 55 cents at 302.25. September down 17 cents at 302.45, and then your back months on feeder cattle down 37 to up as much as 2 cents, which is nothing. Your grains continued down. July corn down 4.25 cents a bushel at 4.15 a bushel. Beans down 12 cents at 10.46 3/4, and your hard red winter wheat right during harvest down 15.5 cents a bushel at 5.34 Your fat cattle trade, we did start to see a little bit of activity on a direct basis, but it doesn't look very promising. Iowa sold 1 load of cattle on Tuesday at 233. Now Nebraska sold 1,100 head, and that was late on Monday, but early in the week, 1 deal, mixed steers and heifers, but still good fat cattle, selling at 230. They had cattle up as high as 238 last week, 237 for sure. Not sure what they're thinking there. I guess they're just wanting to get out. Kansas and Texas have not sold a hoof so far this week. Now your market finder at Stockman's Livestock Market in Yankton, South Dakota, 900 head in overnight, 1,450 head for the fat cattle auction. Conventional fed cattle sell from 238.5 up to 245, which was uneven from 3 lower to $3 higher. Program cattle, non-implanted or drug-free, selling from 240.5 to 249.50. That was 1 lower to 2 higher, so just kind of an uneven fed cattle market. But Gary Marks said that the bulk of the fed cattle through the auction were not fully finished, or not to the point that the packers really like them. And if they had some well-finished cattle there, they sold really well, but a lot of them were not quite as done or overdone as what they like them. Box beef cutout values, choice back up again, up 403 at 394.25, and select was down 69 cents at 382.41. Your slaughter is a bit improved. Up through the first 2 days of this week, your slaughter 229,000 estimated on cattle. That's 8,000 better than this point last week, just 6,000 less than the same point a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Performance Livestock Analytics. Performance Beef is software. It's as easy to use as your cell phone, and it is designed by cattle producers for cattle producers to make your job easier. If you're doing it for hire, it makes your job look that much more professional. You can come up with closeouts, break-evens, and information just at the touch of your finger there, guys. For more information, go to performancelivestockanalytics.com. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market, brought to you by Specialty Risk Insurance, working to protect your livelihood. Your real-time index at the conclusion of Tuesday's sales sitting at 309.80. That was down 7 cents, but basically steady, holding in there pretty well. Latest CME cash feeder cattle index is just 1 day or a day and a half earlier than that, sitting at 310.33. Your big sales on Tuesday, of course, Beaver County Stockyards had a big sale, 3,300 feeders, but then they had a pile of cows to sell, and they were still working on those when I pulled this report. But as far as what I could see on the automated report, your big feeder cattle were selling $2 to $6 higher. Lighter weights, kind of unevenly, $6 to $10 lower. And of course, they're not finding much love on those unweaned soft ballers there. But you look at this automated market report, it was your superior steel sales, superior standard handling equipment stick out sale of the day. It's not on here, but there was 25 head. I'm going to give it to you. I don't like to give small quotes or small head counts, but 25 head of 314-pound steer calves bring $577.50. Wow. They had 285 head of the 5-weight steers, they averaged 554 with a weighted average price of 382.06. 257 head of 7-weight steers averaged 748 at 316.10. There were 404 head of the 8-weight steers. They averaged 861 at 302.02. The heifers, the best tested was the 7-weights. 224 head of those averaged 742 with a weighted average price of $300.47. I'm going to give you several individual quotes that I thought were very impressive all around the country there. How about Holton, Kansas? Holton Livestock Exchange sells 68 steers, weigh 804 at $332.50. That's a big price, guys. How about a market we haven't talked about for a long time? Knoxville Regional Livestock in Knoxville, Iowa. They sold the Rod and Debbie Evitts heifers. They sold well. 74 heifers weighed 733 going to feed for $329.25. How about Flint Hills Stockyards in St. Mary's, Kansas? 62 steers weigh 904 at $315. Wow, that was a stick out load. How about Four State Stockyards in Exeter, Missouri? They sell 61 steers, weigh 714 at $345.25. But the most impressive quote, and there were multiple quotes that I saw on Tuesday in your Macrocin No BS top quote for the day, was at Unionville Livestock Market, their customer appreciation barbecue sale. They fed the bulk of Unionville, Missouri steak sandwiches in there. Nice break for the local cafes there in town, but just the impressive consignments there had the Brundage steers, 4 loads of 6-weight steers. They averaged 642 with an average price on the loads of $380.50. And then of course the Rockin' R's had 7 loads in there, weighing in the high 8s and low 9s. The 7 loads on the average was 898 pounds a load, with an average price per load of $306.39. And that's your feeder flash for Wednesday.